'Cause my love came crashing down. I don't know if it ever will get back up again. I need someone to talk to. I'll say what I'm going through. Tired of complications, relationships not going how I want it to.
Welcome to Dear Emily. Today's episode we're going to be talking about love and credit. And we have the credit guru in the building. It's an honor for me to have on here Mr. Jeffrey Asamoah. Welcome.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you. And in fact, that honor is really mine because that title is too much.
He's just bluffing, okay? So welcome once more.
Thank you.
We're going to get right into our conversation for today. But before we get started, Jeffrey, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm Jeffrey Asamoah. I'm a married man. Sorry, ladies. I definitely got to put that out there, right? So yeah, you know, and I've been out here in Minnesota for good about since 2006. So just a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm a family man. I enjoy business. I enjoy ministry. I enjoy just really being around family, and just one of the things that I really like is to just help people, right? To figure out ways to help people and just connect. Absolutely.
I like that. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. And specifically, you said something about you helping people in the line of finances. It's your area of specialty, correct?
Much more specifically, credit. Absolutely.
Much more specifically, credit. I love that. I love that. I'm going to have to talk to you after so we can work on my own credit.
Let's do that.
Okay? Okay. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, about your line of work, and just we're having a conversation, all right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is, how did you first learn about the importance of credit and managing your finance?
I'll put it this way. You notice how a lot of us didn't really learn about financial education in school, or if we did, it was very minimal, right? It wasn't so much about that, right? So, like most people, I messed up my credit well before I even learned to fix it, right? So I was in debt, the whole concept of debt. I went through it not knowing the knowledge of just how to really, fix things. I didn't understand this thing called credit, right? I had no clue such a thing even existed. Right, so it just happens that after I messed up my credit, now I realize there's this thing called credit, and I have to be able to keep it a certain way to be able to just do simple, regular, everyday living, like being able to get a car, being able to even rent an apartment, and things like that. So that was a little bit of my journey. I messed things up before, learned how to fix it, and since then I decided, let me figure out a way to help other people out with it.
Wow, I learned something from just the first question is you messed up. Yep. And you saw the problem, and now you decided to create a solution.
Absolutely.
By being a credit specialist.
Absolutely.
Okay, that is amazing. Okay, so now today's topic, as you know, we're talking about love and credit. So the next question is, what do you think are the biggest mistakes couples make when it comes to managing their finances? What are some things you've seen in your line of work?
I think one of the biggest mistakes people make, or couples make, when it comes down to managing finances, is they don't actually manage it, right? And then you have times when a lot of people are trying to do their own thing. For example, if you got a couple, you have one person doing their own thing, the other ones do their own thing, right? So just the lack of education, lack of understanding about it, and just, like I said, everybody doing their own thing. That's one of the biggest mistakes I believe that couples make.
Okay, so now, Jeffrey, this is not part of the question, but I'm just going to throw this out there. Have you ever had a couple come in wanting credit coaching, and one person credit maybe 700 or 800, and then the other person 500, and the person with the 500 credit never told the other person with the credit score of 800. With that type of situation, how do you handle that if someone comes to you?
Absolutely. So I'll put it this way. I was that person. I was that couple. So now here's what I mean by that. Prior to being married, right, around that time, I had already started working on my finances, right, because I was literally, like I said, I was terrible with finances. But it got to a point where I was connected with learning how to manage my finances. So I started doing that. I started improving my credit, managing my finances, right, saving the whole nine, learning to invest and all of that. So when I got married, though, I didn't actually, just before we got married, I missed one payment, a simple $25 payment, right? Because the whole chaos of the wedding, I forgot to put it back on auto pay. I don't think I had an auto pay at that time, so I messed that up. And a few months later, when we were ready to buy our first home, I come to find out that my score had dropped just, in fact, below 580, which would have at least allowed me to be part of the loan. My wife's was in the 700s, right? So just by that alone, that happened. So I was that couple, you can say, right? My wife and I were that couple. And because I didn't know to tell her, I couldn't tell her until basically it was too late. But we managed to find a way around that. Now, in terms of other couples coming to me, I think most couples that come to me, they do realize what's going on. They kind of know, or maybe they don't know because people are scared to take a look at their reports. And when that happens, we take a look at it, and then they all find out, at that moment.
I like that, and thank you for being candid on this show about your own story.
Absolutely.
Your credit journey, and with your now wife,
Yeah.
happily married. I love that. Why do you think that is, Jeffrey? Why do you think people have that fear of checking out their credit score?
Yeah, I'll say it's, when people have messed things up, right? It's just like anything in life. When you've messed something up and you don't know how to fix it, you have no clue how to fix it, you tend to want to hide from it, right? It's like a kid, if you got kids, like a kid that they make a mess, they make a mistake, and they tend to run away from it rather than coming around and try to get, to facing it head on, right? So that tends to be what happens. And then even your earlier question you had asked, in terms of a solution, right? Well, a solution is simple. We take a look at your report, see what's going on, and we look at how can we fix these things? How can we address every single problem, right? And just answering this again, why that is just simply people fear the unknown, right? But the reality is credit shouldn't scare nobody. Even bad credit shouldn't scare anybody because everything can be fixed, right? Whether it's given time or given the right information. Everything's information based. So with the right information, the right amount of time, you can fix anything. Yep.
Thank you so much for answering that. Now
Absolutely.
I'm here learning along with the viewers, right?
Absolutely.
Before I get into the questions that will ask about relationship as well, since our topic is love and credit, I want to know what are some ways that people can check their credit scores? Like where can they go if they want to check out their credit scores?
So one of the things you can do, you get a chance, if you ever heard about annual credit report, you can actually go on annualcreditreport.com and you're able to pull your reports for free. So typically it's once a year, but during COVID, and I think we still kind of around that time of COVID, so you can actually pull up your reports once a week, both from Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian once a week. But with annual credit report, you don't get a chance to see your scores. You have to pay for it, right? So they will make you pay for it. And another way, you can always connect with me. I have ways where we can pull your report, some trials, 7-day trials. Some of them are free, some of them will only cost you $1. You get a chance to see your reports and your scores, right? So that's a few ways people can pull up. And I guess one other way too, some banks and some institutions may have, they will have maybe from one of their credit reporting agencies. So maybe it's an Experian, like Wells Fargo would deal with Experian. You're able to check certain scores. And also there's Credit Karma. I don't always, tell people to do Credit Karma because Credit Karma doesn't show you all 3 scores and reports, but at least you can see 2 of them, right? And take a look at Experian itself. So there's a few ways.
Thank you for giving out that information. I know some people are not fully aware of all these things, all the sites that you just listed. So those of you watching, please make sure that you check out the information that Jeffrey just provided. Okay, all right, before we get into the next sets of questions, we're going to take a little break and we will be right back. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're still continuing our conversation with the credit guru, Mr. Jeffrey Asamoah. The first set of questions it's a lot of information that was thrown out there, and I hope people really took from it, or they're going to learn and utilize the information that you gave. Okay,
Right.
So we're going to get into the next set of questions that has more to deal with the love and the credit balance.
Bring it.
Okay, so how have you seen credit play a role in relationships, and in what ways?
In what ways?
Yes.
Okay. When it comes to relationships, right, we always know that finance plays a big role in the rise and the fall of a relationship, right? It's not the only thing, but that's one of the things. So credit is a part of finance, right? So I help to educate or teach financial education primarily as it reflects on or focus on credit. So now we're talking about a relationship where either one couple or both couples have no clue about what's going on in the world of credit, right? Well, that's definitely going to affect everything. Like, I mean, everything, right? So, for example, let's say you just get married and, y'all live in an apartment and you say, you know what, we need to get a home. And you're ready to go do that home, to buy that home, having no idea what your credit even looks like, right? And let's say to your surprise, you're thinking everything's good, but to your surprise, y'all both got the worst credit, or one of y'all got the worst credit. Well, what that does is now, if y'all both got terrible credit, well, you're both not going to get a chance to, be approved. If one of you have bad credit and the other has pretty good enough credit, what happens is you're now both not able to be on that loan, right? So what that does is that limits your buying power, so to speak, because that's really what credit is a buying power. Right, in a nutshell of it is buying power. So yeah, that's I mean, in terms of answering that question, that's definitely how I'll answer that.
Okay. Okay, I love that. 2 words, buying power. That's what credit is. It's buying power.
Absolutely.
So it's important for us to understand the power that we have when it comes to purchasing, which has a lot to do with our credit.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So Jeffrey, I have a question.
All right.
A lot of couples, some couples, especially if they're financially stranded, right? They're financially strained. They take on credit cards to help with their wedding. I've seen a lot of people take on credit cards up to $50,000 just to have the wedding of the year. The wedding of the year. I don't know if you've heard that term, but the wedding of the year. And at the end of the day, because of finances, their relationship doesn't hold. So after a year, I mean, I've seen it in my own community, right? Like after a year, then there's divorce talk because of financial strain and all those things. So what's your take on people taking money, like taking credit cards to help sponsor their wedding or pay for their wedding?
So first of all, every wedding seems to be the wedding of the year, right?
Yeah.
So that seems to be the thing. But in reality, when you're taking loans out for anything, mind you, it's a loan. The key is to be able to pay it back. Well, if you cannot pay it back, that's a problem, right? And then the other factor is anything can happen, right? We never really know what tomorrow holds, right? So you take a loan, you're thinking, well, I'm going to be able to pay it back. When what happens, job loss or whatever it is that happens, you're unable to pay back, right? That's obviously going to damage the relationship if both parties are not peaceful in understanding how to go about the situation. So personally, I wouldn't advise that, but it's funny though that you say this because just, on Saturday actually, I was talking to my wife about that. We're driving somewhere and we actually brought that concept up that, there is a way. Now, that's not advice, by the way. I just want you to know this. I'm not giving anybody any advice here with this, any financial advice. But I was just thinking from a perspective of, we could take out a loan, right, for a wedding and possibly, let's say you have money to be able to pay for the wedding. Rather than putting that, using that money for that wedding, take out a loan to cover it, but making sure you've got money to be paying back that loan and possibly use some of that loan for investments or different things. But that was just something I was talking to my wife about. We're just discussing about that, right? That's not what we end up doing. We actually saved money to make it happen. But once again, like I said, there's not advice to anybody. It was just conversation. But in reality, it's not really something I would advise anybody really, because once again, if something was to happen, you do run the risk of not being able to pay back and you're in trouble. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a no-no.
Okay. It's a no-no.
Ideally, yes.
Yes.
Ideally.
Okay. So what would you advise if boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, right? In a relationship and a boy or maybe the boyfriend or the girlfriend is like, hey, could you co-sign? Could you co-sign for my car? Could you co-sign for my apartment? Like, what's your take on that with people co-signing for their partners?
I learned from a mentor of mine that said, don't co-sign for nobody. Essentially, that's the words that he used. And the reason being, anything can happen. Once again, we are at the point where anything can happen, right? And you can co-sign for somebody. It could be family, it could be a loved one, it could be a friend, it could be whoever, right? Well, what happens when you're unable to deal with the situation? Or let's say that person is unable to pay. Now you stand a risk, right? Because you co-signing, you basically saying, if this person default or cannot pay, I'm here to take on the risk, right? That's essentially what co-signing is. So from a boyfriend-girlfriend perspective, I wouldn't really advise that. Now, even though I'm saying that, watch this though. I remember I had a girlfriend once. So I did have a girlfriend that actually I was in a low situation, financial situation, where and I approached her and she was actually willing to take a loan out for me, right? So even though I'm advising against it, every situation is different, right? So in this case, she did take out a loan for me. I think I needed about $3,000 to $4,000. She took out a loan for me, and I made sure I was making the payments, right? But on the flip side, imagine if I've been one of those people that say, you know what? Nah, this relationship is over. I'm not gonna pay for this, right? And I ran off. Then she would have been left with that debt, right? Fortunately, I wasn't that type of person, right? But that's the risk that you face when you're dealing with co-signing. And believe me, there have been a lot of relationships like that, boyfriend, girlfriend, even marriages too, where, divorce, splits, whatever happens, and yeah.
I like what you said though, because everything that you, down the line of co-signing, you have to really trust the person, the story you just, trust the person enough to put your credit on the line for them, so if you know your relationship's shaky now, don't go co-signing for it.
Don't go do that, because
So you know what? Okay, we're gonna take a little break and then we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're still continuing our conversation with the dynamic credit coaching guru, Mr. Jeffrey.
All right.
How's it going so far?
It's going.
Good.
I didn't know I was a credit guru, but now I know, right?
Now you know. Now you know you can pocket that.
All right, I'll do that. I'm gonna grab that, put it in the pocket somewhere.
Okay, so we just ended the conversation about co-signing, right, before we took a little break. So I have a couple more questions and then we're just gonna keep going. So how can couples best manage their credit and their finances together?
That's a good question.
I'm expecting a really solid answer.
Yeah. Oh no, you definitely gonna get a solid answer for that, because and this is something that I practice at home, right? My wife and I. So, and here's the underlining, I guess, factor folks or people got to think about. You realize that not everybody's on the same page when it comes to finances in a marriage to begin with, right? And I'm going from marriage perspective because I'm married. So now you have people that believe the husband's money is the money of the household, and then the wife's money is the wife's money, right? So if you're living in a situation like that, what I'm going to say might be a little different, right? So it's not a one size fit all. Now I'm speaking to those that are okay with both partners working together financially, all right? Because that's what my wife and I, that's what we do. Once I've got enough money where she ain't got to worry about nothing, oh, trust me, she ain't gonna worry about nothing. But until then, what we do is we work together, right? Since we've been married, that's what we've been doing. So honestly, because a few years prior to me being married, I started learning how to manage my finances, and she was doing very well with her finances before too, right? So when we got married, we made sure, at least I made sure that we tracked everything, because that's what I was doing prior to being married, was tracking everything. So literally, I've got spreadsheets, man. You don't even want to know. You don't even want to go there. Like, I've got spreadsheets, track everything, her income, my income, our expenses all together, right? She's got expenses of her own. I've got some of my own. We've got some household and stuff together, right? So we definitely make sure that we manage it from a tracking perspective. We talk about finances, right? So, man, you're talking about couples. So far as y'all together, y'all want to work together, this is the key. Have that conversation. Manage it, right? Talk about it. Figure out, what are your goals? What are your financial goals? What do y'all want to be able to do? The future, the next 5 years, travel goals, vacation goals, whatever, right? Home goals, like all of that. That's important. So once you have those conversations, now you kind of you'll be able to figure out what it is you need to do together to make that happen. So that's where the management comes in. So it's conversation, action. Absolutely.
Okay. I got two things: conversation, actions, right? So the importance of communication, especially on the line of finances, is crucial for a relationship.
Very, absolutely.
So I have a question now. So for people who are just in the dating phase, trying to figure out whether or not they want to make this thing work or not, move it further, when do you think that conversation of credit and finances should take place? Like, at what stage?
Well, if you are trying to figure it out, I think at some point, pretty soon, that should be a conversation where you have it, right? Because if I meet somebody, say, and I'll give you an example of and I don't want to keep bringing exes, but I'm also
your wife might be watching.
Oh, no, I'm just looking from a relationship perspective where I've been, right? So I remember one specific relationship where pretty early on we started talking about certain things, because it was around that time where I started being educated about finances, where I started having the awakening about finances, right? So I brought it up early, like, hey, who do you owe? What debts do you owe? And I came from it from the perspective of, I want to be able to help manage that. If you need help paying for that, I will help you pay for those things, right? We'll figure it out, kind of game plan, right? So it wasn't, so to speak, like, hey, I just want to pay all your bills, all your debt or whatever, right? And I'm speaking that from experience, right? So that's what I'm saying, that from that level of experience, if you're dating at some point, it depends how serious you guys are, but if you feel like, y'all can really be serious, you can figure it out, have those conversations. Because it's better to have those conversations early than later, right? So a lot of times, and I believe my wife and I, we had those conversations pretty early too, right? We actually got married in a pretty short time period, right? So that conversation was all in there, right? Pretty packed in there. So I do believe you definitely want to have that conversation. It's better earlier than later. Yeah.
So now, on a personal level, for you, when did that question come up? Was it 2 months, 3 months into your relationship, or maybe up to a year when you guys were dating before you brought up the financial conversation?
Yeah. So let's say for my wife and I, we got married probably within a 7-8 month period, right? So honestly, I'm almost kind of drawing a blank with her how we talked about it, because I know we talked about some things, because we even talked about possibly where we're going to move to and all of that, right? So we had all those conversations. So I think probably maybe 4 or 5 months into it, we started having those conversations, because I truly believe that 4 or 5, 6 months in a relationship, you should have an idea who this person is to you, right? Whether you really somebody you want to move forward with, or somebody you're thinking about running away from, right? So either way, you begin to have conversations. So I would say around like 4 or 5 months time frame.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if somebody is like, just go on a date and they're very particular about credit score? Because I know some people have said, I would not date somebody who have a credit score below 700 or 750.
Okay.
I mean, these are real life conversation, right? Yeah. So if somebody were to be on the date and the first question that comes out is, what is your credit score? What would you advise?
Oh wow, that's funny though. That is funny. I don't know what I'll do, honestly. I'll probably be like, what's going on here? Like, but that just means it's important to that person. Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't advise anybody to go ask that question right out the gate, but Yeah, for me, I think that just means important to that person, but nah, you definitely don't want to just throw that out there like your first question like that on your first date. What's your credit score? Well, dang. None of your business, or we'll talk about that later, right? I don't know. I could be wrong, but to each their own here, right? So for this one, yeah, so this one to each their own.
All right, that's solid. I actually had a friend who did that.
Wow.
On the first date, asked the girl, like, so what's your credit score? Hey. And she was like, it's about 500, 600. He said, we can't make it.
This relationship ends here. This date is over.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
oh my
funny.
gosh.
That's funny.
But these are real conversations,
Yeah,
right? That people sometimes they don't have. Some people never bring up the conversation about credit. And then when you finally get married, you realize, wow, this person's credit score is like 400. Oof. Or like 500, then you're stuck, you know? So all the financial burden sometimes is like it's on that one individual with a higher credit score. And then you have to take up all these excess loan that's not even necessary, you know? Have you had that experience with couples that you've coached?
I mean, personally, I've been all those numbers. I've been the 3s, the 4s, the 5s, the 6s, the 7s. I've been there. I've been, close to the 8s, but I've had those numbers. But in terms of others and others coaching wise, and I don't know what conversations they have. Folks normally come to me when it's already bad, and that's one of the things we're actually trying to change. To be honest with you, we're trying to change this whole concept of waiting for your credit to be bad before you approach for help. Right? We want to make sure that people are learning. Right? Being educated. So one of the things we're pushing and working on is credit education, because we truly believe that prevention is better than cure. Same way in the health field, right? Prevention is better than cure in the health field. So same thing with us. It's better to make sure that people are in the community are educated, concerning credit before we actually get to the point where it's so bad. And people honestly do wait till it's bad, and they only find out when they're applying for something. Right, you're applying for a car, you're applying for a house, trying to get a credit card, you're trying to get a loan for whatever it is. That's when you find out, oh man, there's a thing called credit score. Like, I didn't know there was a thing called credit score until I applied for my first little card. Right, so, and I think for a lot of people, that's the starting point for a lot of people. So we're trying to change that narrative for our communities. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for sharing that. I want you to touch on a little bit about the importance of, in terms of credit, how important it is for maybe parents to start adding their kids on their credit cards to help build their credits, right? Because for me, for instance, I never knew anything about credit, right? And my parents probably did not. That's the community, that we are in, that sometimes we find ourselves in.
Right.
We don't have these conversations. So if someone is trying to do the right thing, like to dispel that narrative of don't let it get bad before you get help from a credit specialist, how would you go about having that conversation with someone?
Absolutely, and that's actually one of the education piece that we're talking about. Understanding, because for finance in general should be started at an early age, right? That conversation should happen early. How early? That really depends on your household. Really, because how it depends on the household you grew up in. Maybe you grew up in a Christian home, for example, and you're going to church at the age of 3, 4, 5. Your parents are giving you, $1 or some change to go drop in the offering bowl, right? Well, conversations should be had around there. So far as you can hand your child a piece of money, a piece of paper, or a coin to go drop in the offering bowl, at some point around that, you should be having conversations about money and finance. Unfortunately, though, a lot of these households don't have the education piece about that, right? But think about this. Just like how there's not a mechanic in every household, there's not a doctor in every household, right? So what do? In fact, they're not educators or teachers in every household. So what do? We outsource that. We send kids are sent to school. You send those that are sick in the home, you send them to what? To the hospitals. You send your cars to the mechanics if you don't have folks to be able to fix that, right? So same way, in terms of the education piece, that should be outsourced. Connect with those in the community. Banks are actually educating, right? There are things we just don't get folks in the community. So now you're talking about authorized users, which you're basically talking about being able to add your children onto your credit cards. Now that's a very solid deal, but there are a few factors to keep in mind about that. For example, if the card in question, if you got late payments on the card in question, don't add your kid on there. If you basically, that's the biggest thing actually, is late payments or not making your payments on time, overusing the card, or let's just call it abusing that card. If you're abusing that card or that account that you're trying to add your kid on, it's not going to help the kid, because an authorized user, right, what that does is the individual, it reflects that individual. Whatever the activity on that card is, it reflects that individual, right? So if I was to add, now I've got my kids on, a couple of our cards, right? But we make sure it's ones that had zero problems, right? Now, because primarily we want to make sure it's not going to affect them, when they turn 18 or whatever, then they're going to find out this card has got the worst history ever, right? The biggest mistake, the biggest whatever. So we definitely don't want that. Just make sure that authorized users is very important, because it does jumpstart and help out. But just research about that. If you want to add, a child of yours or somebody to a card, research about that card. Reach out to the company and find out concerning their policy on authorized user. Because some cards, for example, let's say they're 18 right now, and you want to add them to it. I mean, they're no longer a kid, they're 18. You want to add them to a card you've had for like 20 years, 10, 20 years. What happens is some companies, they actually don't count the history you've had on that card. They will count the moment you add them. So if I just add the kid right now and they're 18, their history starts right there. So you got to research about that and find out the policy of that bank or that institution, that credit card company, and how that works, so you know exactly what to do and you don't make no mistakes about it. Yeah.
I'm taking notes.
Please.
Because that's valuable information. Some of the things that we don't know, right? And some of our parents never really knew, so they were unable to pass that down to us. So I'm glad you're talking about it. Okay, so what are some credit cards you would recommend for couples who are trying to build their credit score together? What are some credit cards?
So we can say this. Usually, if depend on your credit, right? So if you go to, I always recommend you go to your local bank or your local credit union. Start off with them first. Have that conversation with them, and find out what you can qualify for, right? And so if you're unable to qualify for an unsecured card, which is a card that you don't need to put any money down as collateral, right? A regular credit card. If you don't qualify for that, most banks or credit unions will help you qualify for what is called a secured credit line, right? So basically what that means is that you got to put down some type of money as collateral. They will hold that money in an account, and they will give you usually an equivalent amount in the form of a credit card, and they'll, for you to use it the same way you use a regular credit card. And most of these, institutions, banks and whatnot, after a certain amount of time, maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year, they will turn it into an unsecured line, give you back your money, your collateral that you put down, and you just kind of keep going on from there. So that's just one of the ways. But definitely, I'm open for a conversation with anybody to show you there's some other methods as well too.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll take a quick break. Okay.
Yeah.
So my next question here is, what are some of the benefits of having a joint bank account or credit cards with your partner?
Well, so I guess in terms of a joint credit card, that will be the same thing as an authorized user, right? I'm on some of my wife's cards, she's on some of mine, right? So that's the point of that. That's the concept of that, authorized user. So once again, though, everything reflects, right? So if you're misusing one card, the other person's gonna hit them the exact same way. So that's the the benefit of that part, though, is if it's good, if everything's good, then you're both good. It's helping, you're gonna be helping each other. A joint account, I think, and we have joint accounts. We've got separate accounts, we've got joint accounts, right? What that does is, and the whole game plan there is allowing all the household bills to flow through the joint account, right? And then, she got her own card, I got my own card, different accounts where we can, send money to, or just basically use, to buy whatever things we want to buy for ourselves, right? So the benefit of that is really, I guess, the joint aspect. It's just trust. I think it's really a level of trust. That's the main benefit. Just making sure, I guess, from a tracking perspective too, that makes it a little bit easier, depending on how you structure it, right? But besides that, I don't know if there's any other real benefit, especially from a joint account outside of a credit card, right? Besides that, I don't know if there's any other. I mean, if anybody knows of anything, hey, I'm all ears.
Okay. Well, thank you. There you have it from our dynamic credit specialist, guru. You have everything, all the words, all the positive words. Yes, now you have to live up to it.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll take a little break and then we'll be right back with Mr. Jeffrey Asamoah. Welcome back, everyone, to Dear Emily. Today we're talking about, again, love and credit with the dynamic, wonderful, awesome of all awesomes, Mr. Jeffrey Asamoah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. So we left off on talking about bank account and credit cards. What are some of the benefits, right? So now we're going to go into breakups.
Oh.
Breakups, yeah, that's always hard. But let's talk about it. So in the event of a breakup, or let's just say a divorce,
okay.
In the event of a breakup or a divorce, how can couples protect their credit score?
Man, that's a touchy one. I mean, I've seen it happen. I've experienced that in terms of clients and whatnot, and folks that I've coached. So when you talk about protecting it, first of all, if they were together, let's say, they were married or in a relationship, and the only way you'd have to worry about protecting it is if you ever put anything together, either on a joint account or authorized, right? Or anything like that, or you co-signed or any of those type of things. And believe it or not, that does hurt relationships even after whether it's the breakup or the divorce and all of that. Especially if one partner is basically saying, hey, I need you to take my name off of these things because, I want to be able to apply for this, for that, and this is hurting my chances to get this type of loan or whatever. So honestly, the biggest thing is to find a way to pay it off, whatever it is. Find a way to pay it off. Find a way to basically refinance. That's the key, actually. You either pay it off. So I'll give you a real example. So let's say two people in a relationship, married, divorced, breakup, and there's either a car or, I'm going to use some simple things, like a car or a personal loan or something that was either co-signed, joint, right? So if it's joint, you basically just want to pay for it, both parties. Just figure out what it is, make the payment so y'all can leave it alone. If it's co-signed, you definitely want to, from a peaceful perspective, if one party is stressing the other, from a peaceful perspective, you just want to make sure that you either try to pay it off, right? Especially if it's co-signed, try to pay it off, or see if you can refinance. But the refinancing aspect now, there's the issue, is that maybe somebody comes in, they want to refinance, but their scores are not reflecting properly, right? They got lower scores, too much mess on their report, right? So that will limit them from being able to refinance, right? So that's when I would say seek the help of a specialist, or figure it out, hustle, get another job, figure it out, like, honestly, because it's not worth the stress of having to deal with a partner or an ex-partner that basically is willing to drag you through the mud just to get their name off of something. Yeah.
Okay. In other words, seek the help of Jeffrey Asamoah.
Like myself, absolutely.
Seek the help of him or someone that you have around that knows a lot about credit and stuff.
Absolutely.
And to that, our last question for today is, what tips would you recommend to couples or someone who is trying to improve their credit score? What are some tips?
Manage your finances. whether it means making more money or spending less money on whatever, right? So you being able to manage your finances, you will see what's going on. Set up a budget, track everything. Like, if you ask my wife, she'll tell you there was points, and even kind of we still do this now. I guess I do this. I track even coins in the house. Like, I'll even go into her purse. And if there are coins in the purse, I'm like, yo, I need to account for this because I just want to know what's in the house, like money-wise, right?
You really are a credit specialist.
That, not that extreme, but it's anyway. So let's just leave that alone. So like literally, like anytime maybe she went out and even bought gas or spent anything, and maybe she comes, I'm always asking for the receipt because I want to make sure it's accounted for. It's like I don't even care what you bought. Like sometimes she's like, oh, I don't want you to. No, I don't care what you buy. I just want to make sure I can track it, know what's coming in and what's going out. That's all that helps, right, to do. Outside of that, now we're talking about so once again, being able to manage your finances. Secondly, you being able to take a look at your credit report, right? There's something called a credit report so we always say this, that a credit report is basically the adult report card. That's all it is. Right, is the adult version of a report card. So it tells you how you've been doing as an adult financially, right? So take a look at your credit report, see what's on there. Make sure everything is good because honestly, I think the stats is almost 80% of all credit reports contain errors of some sort, right? So I encourage everybody to obtain your credit report. Know what's on there, right? Once you know what's on there, now, if there are errors on there, errors can be as simple as even your name being spelled wrong, or the wrong name being reported, wrong addresses being reported, wrong employment being reported, date of birth being wrong, social, like all that kind of stuff, and accounts being reported wrongly. You realize that identity theft is so crazy in this country, in this world, really, but in this country too. I forgot what the stats are, but it's really crazy. Identity theft is high, right? So obtaining your credit report lets you know whether the information on there is yours, right? So once you know what's on there, if nothing is bad, just make sure you're making your payments on time. You're using your credit cards wisely, right? So the ideal number that people say is staying below 30% of your credit utilization. So that simply means this: if you have $1,000 limit, not using or allowing a balance of more than 30% a month, but truly. My advice to anybody, and this I will give you advice on because this is my field. What I'll tell anybody is not to even use more than 10% or leave a balance of more than 10%, right? Because that actually factors in differently when it comes to your credit scores. So then making sure that you're not applying for new credit, applying for credit anyhow, because that also factors in. And what else? So making sure, once again, you're tracking things, checking your report. And if there are errors on your report, you have the right. We as citizens, we have rights. Right? As consumers, we have rights. You have the right to basically reach out to the credit reporting agencies of any error that's on your report, to dispute any error, right? Because it's their duty to report, make sure that they're reporting information that is accurate. Right, so if they're not reporting accurate information, you have the right to dispute those things, right? So when we talk about tracking, managing your finances, checking your reports, try to make some money, man, honestly, because really, there's a lot that falls and rides on money, right? Being able to make money, being able to manage the money, checking your reports, using your credit cards wisely. Yeah, that's a little bit, and connect with a specialist every once in a while. And I'll say this if you don't mind me saying. I've realized a lot of times, too, there are people that sometimes their credit scores are fine, they're good, they're in the 700s, but do you realize that sometimes some of those people are just one little mistake away from scores dropping by even 100 points, almost 200 points sometimes? Right? So lately, one of the things that I've been offering friends and family who believe their credit scores are good, I say, let me sit down with you, take a look at your report, analyze it for you, help you break it down. So we know, how well it's structured. If it's structured well, you're good to go. If you don't need me, you don't need me. But if you do need me, I will advise you. Or if you need my services, right, we'll definitely talk about that part. But so that's just something I would say, connect with a specialist, connect with somebody that can be of help to you. And yeah, you'll be good to go.
All right, there you have it. We've heard from the amazing Jeffrey Asamoah, who just taught us about love and credit. And I will say, just from having this conversation with you, Jeffrey, one thing that I notice about you, and I know that you probably do this with your clients, is you build a relationship with them.
Absolutely.
You build a relationship with them, not just about their credit, but you want to know why, as to why they're making certain decisions, financial decisions.
Yep.
So thank you so much for joining us tonight on Dear Emily. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome, and I hope it won't be your last time. Okay, for sure, we'll have him back, okay?
All right.
We'll have him back on here. So thank you. Once more, thank you, Jeffrey, for joining us. And I would just part us with this. One of the things that I took from Love and Credit Conversation is communication is key in a relationship.
Yep.
So a lot of times we don't balance finance and love, and it's so crucial for you to balance finance and love. And something that I tell people as a coach is love alone does not sustain a relationship. Okay? If you want love to be sweet, you need money. Okay? If you want love to be sweet, you need money. If you want love to be stressful, don't have money, and there will be a lot of issues in a relationship. So why not start having that conversation early on, especially about your credit score and how best you can maintain it, how you can, make it grow healthier, and all those things, right? But we've all made financial mistakes. We've all made financial mistakes. But like we say on this show, whenever there's a problem, there's always a solution. And Dear Emily is here to be able to offer that solution on any of the topics that we talk about, with having some dynamic guests like Jeffrey Asamoah, who opened the show today. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching episode 1 of Dear Emily, Love and Credit with the wonderful credit specialist, Mr. Jeffrey Asamoah. We will see you next time. Thank you for watching.
'Cause my love came crashing down. I don't know if it ever will get back up again. I need someone to talk